Howdy peeps, hope you're doing well. Just wanted to say thank you to those of you that have left comments on my last video, which was called When Did Things Start to Suck? And in particular, I'd like to thank Seeker for, I guess, what you could say is the kind of story of his life. And I'm not being disrespectful with that either, by the way. Genuinely mean it. Now, there's a part of that I'd like to really talk about, and that is, well, it's the second paragraph in, and well, I'll just read it out. She tried to make contact, come back a lot over time. I answered a private number the first time. It was her. Said she could not believe I would not remain friends. The audacity, right? She could not believe I would not be the forever waiting in the shadows ex-man, like every other bird's exes. I know, right? But that's good on you, man. That shows self-respect and self-love. You know, like I sort of said previously, it's like leftovers. Who the fuck wants to be leftovers, man? Like, seriously? It's just... What makes them think that? You know, they can just, it's just some sort of a box they can put down, put in a corner, and then go and pick it up when it fucking suits them. It's like, really? Anyway, the bit that I particularly wanted to focus on for this video is this next bit. She tried to spin it all back on me, as if I was the monster and self-sabotaged the relationship. The scary thing is, birds gaslight themselves into believing their own BS. So I guess I was truly the monster, in her mind. Yeah, man. Pretty much. And I think I've got something to say. Well, I know I've got something to say on it. But I think I can pretty much nail the perspective that they take when that happens. And sure, it might be for very, very many different reasons. You see, oftentimes they will feel the need to justify their behaviour or their actions. I suppose it doesn't really matter if it's a case of whether they have another romantic interest, should we say. You know, they find another guy who's being a little bit flirtatious with them. And so they feel the need to want to go and investigate that, you know, because after all, like you say further on in that comment, you know, the guy, we don't remain brand new. So it's the newness, as it were, of a new relationship. And like you say, it doesn't really matter if the grass is greener on the other side or not. At the time, it's just down to it's something new. And I think the reason why they have to justify it to themselves, and this isn't just on the level of, you know, if they've found or if they've met someone else or someone has come into the social circle and they find themselves a little bit attracted to them or something like that. It might be kind of, well, it's probably part of it. But I would say that the reason why they demonize and they vilify the guy that they're with at the time in a relationship with is to internally justify to themselves why they're feeling what they're feeling, and in some cases why they end up doing what they end up doing. Now, realistically, I would argue that it does come down to a lot of the time that they're not emotionally mature. You know, they haven't truly got a hold over their own emotions for whatever reason. And I'm not going into the psychology of it. I'm just keeping this basic or as basic as I can. And so, yeah, like I say, the only way they can really justify their behaviours is, you know, to kind of tell themselves that their partner that they're with at the time is this bad guy. He doesn't do this, he does it. And then they start looking at all the negatives And so, as again, to kind of add fuel to the justification fire, as it were. And so over time, they build up this thing in their head that, oh, well, this guy is just horrible, even though oftentimes it's far from the case. And I'm sure there's plenty of women's magazines out there that have spoken about this. There's certainly quite a few videos on different sort of manosphere channels, and whereas they talk about, oh, I left the guy that I loved, and then years later, or sometimes not even years later, they realise that the grass really wasn't greener on the other side. But in them leaving the other guy, yeah, sure, the guy will go through a depressive sort of state initially, because it's upsetting, it's a bit of turmoil, it's like you've invested the time, effort, the money, although it's something we do talk about. I mean, personally, for the most part, I really don't give a fuck about the money. The money can be earned back. On a personal opinion on that one, it's more to do with the time invested, but more importantly, the loyalty and trust and the respect that I invest in relationships. That's the bit that really fucks me off. But that's neither here nor there. That's just that's just kind of my opinion on it. But digressing back, it is down to that thing of, it's their way of justifying to themselves their behaviour, because they know what they're doing is wrong. They know it. So, well, if this guy is this, that and the third, then yeah, everything's their fault. And so therefore, I can behave like this. I'm allowed to, giving myself permission and all that, right? That's the long, tall and short of it. And then there's the other sort of part of that comment where you're saying about, whereas a lot of the time now they're convinced that, oh, well, they're always going to have this, a lot of simps, as it were, a lot of guys that are just happy to throw themselves at their feet, in the hopes of getting a whiff of the quiff, as it were. But again, it's like even that is starting to change. I think there's a lot more men now really starting to wake up as to the, well, lack of respect and lack of maturity, more importantly, from a lot of women, And it also comes down to that thing of, oh yeah, well they want all the power and all the authority, but they don't want any responsibility. This is kind of, I'm going to segue off a little bit. I was listening to a bit of the radio today. I was just sort of channel hopping or whatever, and I caught a glimpse of this channel, and they were talking about a couple of MPs. I'm not sure if they're over here or if they were over in Australia. I think it might have been a combination. But one of the guys was sort of saying that, oh, we shouldn't have any female MPs. So, of course, the first thing that comes up was, yeah, you're a misogynist. So, no, he might have a point, actually. But then again, if you segueing off a little bit further, my opinion of the current government governments throughout most of the world, for the most part, they're run by psychopaths anyway. In my opinion, they're absolute psychopaths. I don't mean that as in, oh, I'm just using that as a word. I mean the literal sense. These guys are fucking crazy. Need to be reined in quite a bit because they're getting a bit too carried away with themselves. Especially since about March 2020, if you know what I mean. But anyway, digressing back onto this whole situation that you were talking about with your ex and, her trying to get back in contact with you, and obviously you have I'm paraphrasing at this point, by the way, you have a all bridges burnt policy, salt the earth. No, I don't kind of have that policy, to be honest. I don't. I ain't got a great deal of problem with many of my exes, to be fair. That's just me. But obviously, in your particular instance, for her to sort of force herself into your life, that's a bit cheeky. That is a bit naughty. But it's also one of them things, And I'm not going to read the rest of it, but the one thing I will say, dude, is I hope that you can get back to healing yourself and get back to a bit more of a normality. Of what I would say, I mean, I'm obviously not fully aware of the circumstances, and you do you. And I don't want to, well, I guess I'm going to kind of be like, oh yeah, I'm being the armchair therapist over here, right? But I'd be tempted to not to find out, but to know as to why it kind of rocked your inner peace a little bit. I mean, you don't have to say it. It's just sort of like, well, is it a case of feelings and emotions stewing back up? Or, I mean, again, you don't have to answer, man. It's your thing. I respect that. I do. Anywho, I think that's almost it for this video. I wasn't sure. There's something that I've considered talking about, and I don't really know if I really want to or not. But I've got to say, man, sometimes it is interesting when an ex reaches out to you, and then you realise that they still care. That's an interesting concept. Definitely. But I suppose it's not really that important, and this has gone on long enough. So anyway, Seeker, thank you very much for that comment. It's much appreciated. If anyone's got any thoughts, comments and opinions, anything that I've said, please feel free to jot it down. Until the next one, stay cool and peace out.